Greetings all, my name is John McCormack. I'm the convener of the Overhead Lines panel, B2 for Australia, and I'm a lines engineer with Electronet South Australia. Before I start my presentation, I'd just like to note that this is my last year as the convener, and I'd just particularly like to thank the Australian Committee for giving me this opportunity to take on this role and the support they provided. It's been a fantastic experience and I've met some absolutely wonderful people. So special thanks to the outgoing chairman and committee members, and welcome to the new chairman and committee members. My first slide is about the panel activities. At the top of the slide is listed our key objectives and strategies, and we've been quite successful in implementing those even though we've had the constraints on communication and travel over the last 12 months. Regarding our membership, we've had 8 new members join the panel, so we've got quite a considerable amount of new blood. 4 of those replaced others that have resigned, and we've had 4 new corporate members, 2 of which were design consultants, 1 was a supplier, and the last one was a contractor. In addition to our regular members, we have 11 specialists that have been invited by myself or other conveners to participate in the development of their technical brochures and other documentation, and the value add from these specialists has been quite fantastic. We have 3 NGN reps, one of which is my current secretary, Stephanie Phillips from AusNet, who did an absolutely brilliant job helping me with getting the panel meeting running this year, and being her first year at it was fantastic. She was assisted with my previous secretary, who's also an NGN rep on the panel, so thanks to Frank for that work as well. And lastly, we have a B1 underground cable rep on the committee. At this point, I'd just like to take the opportunity to note the loss of Phil Dahunty. He was very, very active in our panel and very active internationally in CIGRE, in B2 and CIGRE, and very well known for his humour and his poetry as well as his technical expertise. Also, Vic Morgan passed away this year. I don't really know if he was a member of our panel, but he was very well known in the industry, both in Australia and overseas, due to his expertise in conductor technology. The panel meeting this year was 3 afternoon sessions. The first of those was a closed session where panel members could raise matters that may be confidential, that they only wish to discuss amongst the panel. And then we had 2 open meetings. And at those open meetings, we invited a number of guests, including some from overseas. And we had well over 60 people attend those meetings, which was just a fantastic outcome. We've been practicing this for a couple of years now, and as a consequence, I think we've been able to secure a couple of new members that I mentioned earlier. Of the presentations, the Australian members provided quite a range of case studies of activities within their own utility or company. But one in particular was interesting, was from a Japanese guest who talked about a mobile phone app developed by one of the utilities over there, where they could then communicate more effectively with their contractors of any safety initiatives. And whilst that's still under trial, it's actually proven to be really quite successful. So I guess we'll hear more about that in the future. On this slide, I've summarised some of the activities of SCP2, the international body for overhead lines. You can see there's 23 active working groups, and of those working groups, Australia has 3 conveners, and one of those new working groups has an Australian secretary. In addition to that, there's probably at least 20 of those working groups Australia has active working group members. So we're very much engaged with the work of CIGRE. So I'm really proud to say that the panel's very active in that regard, and and the learnings coming out of that has been quite good. In addition to those activities, I have the technical brochures listed, but what I wanted to note about that is that all of these particular ones, we did have Australian representation as either corresponding members or working group members, but one of those brochures was reviewed by an Australian member, and in addition to that particular one, there's been two other technical brochures that are almost ready for publication that are also reviewed by Australian members. So I'd like to thank the panel for their support in that regard. And also, in addition to that, 4 or 5 Australian panel members assisted me with reviewing papers for the Convener conference that's going to be held later this month. On this slide, I've listed the 4 new working groups that have been established this year, and a particular note I have I'd like to point out the last one, where Bing Lin is the secretary. Bing was my panel secretary some years ago, and since then he became the co-chair of the NGN, so he's very much involved in CIGRE and has got quite a considerable amount of experience, but stepping up as a secretary of a working group will be quite a challenge. I wish him all the success for that. This slide here is a list of proposed working groups. One has since been approved, and one that will be approved probably within the next few weeks. The list of actually proposed working groups is quite considerably longer than this, but these are the ones I think are most likely to kick off in the next 12 months. What I'd like to particularly point out are those particular working groups, proposed working groups that come under the tag 7. About 4 years ago, I took on the role as a convener of tag 7, which is a subcommittee that sits under Study Committee V2. And the responsibility of that tag is asset management and reliability. One of the things that one of my tasks that I had when I took over that was to take on some outstanding actions that hadn't really moved for some time to get the asset management and the construction methodology working groups up and running. So I'm really proud to say that we finally got there. It's taken a little while, but we finally have got there. Yes, as I said, the asset management one is about to be signed off, and when we were developing the terms of reference for the construction methodology working group, it occurred to me that the safety one warranted its own working group, an own study, and so I separated that out, and I've written the terms of reference for that, and that's under review now, and it's likely that'll kick off also sometime around the end of the first quarter next year. But that will run in parallel with the construction methodology one, so I need to still get that finalised and get that through and approved. The last one I'd like to just point out is ice and overhead lines. There's a lot of interest in Australia on that, particularly because of the snowy 2, and it's what we've proven is that Australia has developed some excellent expertise in that area because of that job. But there's considerable interest elsewhere as well because of the changing climate patterns and effective ice on overhead lines. It's not just New South Wales that need to deal with that, it's also Victoria and Tasmania and New Zealand that have significant issues in that area. My last slide is to introduce Asif, who will take over as the convener. He's well known in the industry in Australia. He's worked for utilities and for consultants. And in addition to his role as the convener of this panel, he is also the current convener of another working group, and that's listed there in the beginning of the second paragraph, risk modelling of overhead lines. And in fact, that scope of that job was expanded to include distribution lines. So he'll take over from me, and I, likewise with the others, I wish him more success for the next 6 years. So thank you very much. Thank you again for the opportunity to act as convener, and we'll see you sometime. Bye.